Try again.
Hi.
What's happening, y'all? Welcome to Storytime with Julian. This is episode number 96. We are slowly but surely creeping up on the come up of the 100th episode. And the timing for what I wanted to do has not worked out. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you, like, the 100th episode, we probably just going to keep it a bug. It's just going to be a regular episode, and I'm okay with that. I hope y'all are okay with that. What we were going to do is going to be postponed a little bit, but I have the opportunity to present to you all an original play with the original cast that has worked with the producer directly. I was a part of it. The play is called, well, you know what? I'm not even going to say the name yet, but it's a play that is about some of the last days of James Baldwin and an evening spent with Maya Angelou, Miles Davis, and James Baldwin and his brother. And I was a part of the table reading cast who worked with the producers and the playwright to make sure that the flow of the play was going. And right now, it's about to open in New York, and after they do the inaugural read, I have the opportunity to present it right here on this show with that cast. So instead of it being story time with Julian, it's going to be playtime with Julian. And these are some phenomenal actors. It's a really, really fantastic script. It's a wonderful play. We're going to do a table read for you. I had hoped that the timing was going to work out for us to be able to do it for the 100th episode, but the opening in New York is going to be delayed just a little bit. So it's probably going to be one of the things that we do as soon as we come back. Or maybe we'll just do it as a special event, kind of like our wordplay was a special event. We might do it like that. But anyway, we are at episode 96 right now. That's what we're doing right now. That's what we're about to get into. And it's so good to see y'all here. I have to say that during the toss across, while we're waiting for folks to kind of join in, I love seeing you guys greet each other. I love the kind of family dynamic and vibe that this space has fostered. Everybody like, hey, good evening, y'all. Hey, everybody. Oh, hey, good to see you. I love seeing that. It does my heart good. I like what we have here. I like what we have here in this space. And I want that to continue, but I also want that to grow. So I want to encourage you, first of all, a couple of things. Right now, if you're on Facebook, tag a friend. Tag a friend and let them know that this is going down and invite them to come watch with you. Actually, let's see, there's 3 of you all who are watching on Facebook right now, I think. So tag a friend and let them know that this is going down. Bring them over. For those of you who are on YouTube, please share this link. I really, really want this YouTube channel to grow. I want you to invite people. If you like a story and you dig a story, share that particular episode with somebody. Let somebody else find out what this vibe is about. Okay. We really want to build on that. And one of the things that I want to do is when we get to 1,000, I have been curating and cultivating what we're calling the STWJ Lit Bag. It's a dope collection of books. There's some Storytime with Julian faves. There's some new stuff in there. There's some autographed editions in there. And when we get to 1,000, we are going to give that bag away to one lucky subscriber. All you have to do to be eligible is subscribe to the channel. Make sure you ding that bell so that you get notifications. Like a video, comment on a video. And every time you have liked and commented, and I don't mean in the chat thread. The chat thread is one thing. I mean on the actual video itself, after it's posted, after it's streamed, like and comment on a video, and that is your entry. One comment per video, but for every video that's on there, that if you've got a comment, you've got an entry. All right. And we will make a digital bag and do like a sorting hat, but it won't tell you Hufflepuff and Gryffindor. It'll tell you whether or not you won. And we will draw one at random. So please make sure that you do that. But I'm asking for some of you all to invite. And I love it. Kitty Foxy, when she's on, she's like, look, listen. She's inviting Cleopatra Jones. I hope she invites Coffee. I hope both of them come. I've never seen Cleopatra Jones and Coffee in the same room at the same time. And that has me wondering. Anyway, let's see who all we got. So we got Kitty Foxy here. We've got Olive and Boo. We've got my friend from back in the day, Takesha Warner. So good to see. Matter of fact, hold up. Isn't that Dr. Takesha Warner? I believe it is. If my memory serves correctly, that's Dr. Takesha Warner in the building. Good to see you. We've of course got some of the regulars here. Judy Lee is here. Good to see you. Melanin Monroe is here. Brenda Carol Jackson Harvey with all four names heading over to the YouTubes right now. Hopefully she's here already. We've got Kamisha Umstead with the wave. Good to see you. Who else do we have? I saw somebody else. Saw somebody else that I recognize. I think I'm missing a name or two, but make sure you bring your friends. Listen, I want to go ahead and jump into tonight's stories because we got two tonight. I want to make sure that we have enough time and hopefully a little bit of room for discussion. I was saying in the pre-read, this has been a heavy kind of day for me, like a lot. So I had to really gather up my energy to make sure that we got a good read in tonight. And the story that I selected, I honestly have no idea if it's going to be the payoff that I hope it is, but sometimes again, we're taking it real easy, kind of keeping the structure light until after the 100th episode. Um, the story that I selected tonight is called "'Cause Harlem Needs Heroes," and I like the sound of it. And I was like, cool, let's see what this is. I flipped through, I saw a few little passages and phrases, and I was like, okay, this might be dope, but I can't speak to what the nature of the story is. So, and I haven't been saying this out loud much, but we always have the disclaimer that comes on the top of the screen. Listen, if any of the content in these stories is a little bit too much for you, if it's vexing your spirit, if it's bogging down your soul somehow, take a break, step away, holler at one of your friends that's still on the thread and be like, okay, is it over that weird part yet? I know that when we deal with Black literature, we deal with Black pain. That is a part of it. That is a part of the experience that from which so much of our art, for better or for worse, is created. And so in the event that this has something triggering, because I know one of the lines I saw was like, yeesh, okay, let's find out what that's about. In the event that this story has something triggering, I want to make sure that you are prioritizing self-care, because that's what the foundation of this show was about. What's up? I see my partner in hosting from our other show. I got another show. We do this show together. It's called This Is Called the Show. The show is called This Is Called the Show. And that's my man Steven over there with Soul Monkey Publications. Make sure that you like that channel so that you can find out about that show that we do every Monday night at 10 p.m. It's a late night Black community or African American discussion show, and it's lit. The first episode was dope, and I know it's just gonna get better. So make sure that you subscribe to that too. It's real. All right. Moving on. I got stuck on that Cleopatra Jones. Moving on, I really want to go ahead and jump into the first story by Kevin Brockenbrow. Brockenbrow. And the title of the story is, hold on, I think I didn't put I got it right. I did it. Hey. The title of the story is "'Cause Harlem Needs Heroes." Let's just jump in and see what we got. If you could add some years to your life by killing someone else, would you do it? I know at least one person who decided to go for it. Know how I know? Because I'm the other guy. The one left holding the short end of the stick. The one left watching the clock. Rather than just getting it over with nice and quick, I get to die a piece at a time. An arm here, a leg there. Born black and a clone. Died bone by bone. Until 24 hours ago, New York City had a law forbidding the capture of clones by the original cell donor for the forced removal of body parts. The mayor's spin doctor had even developed a politically correct term for it: harvesting. Of course, it had been going on for years on the sly, but the repeal of the law had every money-hungry thug in the city looking to cash in by returning missing property. I figured killers were like most folk. It takes one to know one. So I asked my man Train to meet me here for a drink. His job was to kill, and he was damn good at it. Heaven was the hottest jazz club in Harlem. It was early evening and both the band and the crowd were just arriving. Train waved me over to his table tucked off to the side, next to the bar's wall-high fish tank. The back of the tank had pictures of famous jazz musicians pasted to it at odd angles, so it always looked as if something was swimming out of Satchmo's horn. Every time I came here, the game was the same. The sisters loved looking at the fish, while all the brothers would stare at the TV monitors hanging over the bar, trying to catch the latest scores. The angle of our table allowed us to check out both the game and the pretty women looking at the fish, or using the fish as an excuse to look at us. On any other night, a little flirting would have been fun. But tonight, sex was the last thing on my mind, although my new synthetic body parts probably worked as well as their human originals. I miss playing ball, Train said, his eyes locked on a computer simulation of a battle between the 2001 LA Lakers and the 2050 Knicks. At 6'7", Train once dreamed of playing for the Knicks. Born in 2040, he was old enough to have seen a few flesh and blood games prior to the first vampire sightings in 2053. The blood-red dreadlocks grazing his shoulders marked him as a Harlem Ranger, a special unit within the police force whose job it was to protect our neighborhoods from the undead. The Times estimated that in Harlem alone there were approximately 1,000 vampires to every ranger. But everybody knew that number was way too low. And once word got out that the mayor himself had decided Harlem was expendable, even fewer people signed up. Train used to joke that the Rangers always needed new blood. Against his father's wishes, Train joined the Rangers at the age of 17, a year after he got his driver's license. 10 years later, even the most conservative estimates had him killing more vampires than anyone ever to wear the badge. He was the most feared man in Harlem. He was also my best friend. "What took you so long?" he said, eyes still on the game. "I got delayed." "That ain't what I heard," Train said. "I heard you got jumped." "Who told you that?" "I just know what I heard," he said. "Is it true?" And that was the hard part, dealing with the reality. What they had done to me and what they would do to me. And to make matters worse, some of the faces in the crowd looked a lot like the men who had tortured me. As if he was reading my mind, Train said, "Chill. In here, I can help you. You hit the streets, you on your own." He gave me what was left of his drink, but my hand was shaking so badly, I ended up with more of my rum on my shirt than in my mouth. "You starting to embarrass me, bro," he said, as he handed me a napkin. "Get a grip. You don't know what it's like." Okay, that was weird. Sorry. "You starting to embarrass me, bro," he said as he handed me a napkin. "Get a grip. You don't know what it's like, being chased, hunted." "You'd be surprised what I know," he said, waving to get our waitress's attention. "Tell me about your new legs." Despite hiding the plastic-covered metal under my best pinstripe suit, my interview suit, Train's ears must have picked up the buzz of the cybernetic motors. But with the crowd noise and the TV, that couldn't be happening. Unless... "You know who did this, don't you?" I said. "Yeah," he said. "And so do you." Which meant I was definitely running out of time. "I don't understand you, Joe," Train said. "You just gonna let them take you apart piece by piece?" "Hell, if I was you, but that's just it." "I'm not you," I cut in. "You're the law. Me, well, I'm just spare parts. I don't have a choice." "That's where you're wrong," Train said. "You got a choice. When it comes to how we live or die, everybody's got a choice. But don't worry. You roll with me, nobody'll do anything stupid." I couldn't argue with that. Those words and a few more drinks actually got me to relax a little. Heaven actually had a reputation of being the safest spot in Harlem. The security system was state-of-the-art, supplementing the burly bouncers and their tasers with central air conditioning system that delivered high-grade tear gas when things got wild. "Let's talk about something else," he said. "You still want to do that interview?" A week ago, we had discussed my doing a feature story on the Harlem Rangers. I was already making a nice living doing freelance pieces for both magazines and TV, but stories involving the Rangers were so rare that this one-on-one was guaranteed to make me a very rich man. I just had to live long enough to cash the check. I tapped the right arm of my eyeglasses, turning on the nano-optic routers that would allow interested cable viewers both to see and hear the story live. "I'm ready. You want to talk about the charges?" I said. "I got nothing to hide," Train replied. "Like I said, I didn't kill him." Both fellow officers and the press were talking about the presumed death of the first Harlem Ranger, Thelonious Monk Smith. Presumed because they couldn't find the body, despite the huge amounts of blood at the scene. The police report said that Monk's blood had been found all over Train's shirt, but Train had refused to reveal what happened to his fellow officer. One thing you should know, Monk was Train's father. If you didn't do it, then who did? I asked. Ask Monk, Train said. So you're saying Monk is still alive? I asked. I didn't say that. You said that, Train said. I just said I ain't kill him. I placed my copy of the police report on the table. Then how do you explain the blood? I asked. That's the wrong question, he said. What you should be asking is this. Who had a reason to see my father dead? All right, I'll bite. If you didn't do it, who did? To quote the DA, no body, no motive, no case. Can you believe that? Train said. He didn't even try to solve the case. Know why? Because to solve the case would shed light on things City Hall would prefer to keep quiet. That's why. He lit a cigarette, but his words lingered in the air much longer than the smoke. You know, the DA never did like Pops, he said. People on the street saw Pops as a hero, but the district attorney, the chief of police, the whole city hall clique, never. None of them ever gave Pops his due. The most dangerous job in the city, and not a single commendation. But I'm going to tell you something. The streets know a hero when they see one. And Harlem needs heroes. Train's eyes circled the room, then settled on the fish tank. A larger fish chased a small fish, just missed. I hear what you're saying, and this may seem cold, but you had the man's blood all over you. You have to know who did it, I said. Why aren't you doing something about it? I am doing something about it, he said. I'm recruiting. What you need is somebody who could pull some strings, I said, like the mayor. He's known Monk for years. No, he's the worst one, Train said. Read between the lines, kid. Nobody really wants to know what happened. I do, I said. And that was true. I worshipped Monk. He was the closest thing to a father I ever had. Maybe I'd see him on the other side. Somebody was happy to see him go, Train said. Everyone was given strict orders not to ask any questions. Okay, but that's never stopped you before, I said. True, he said. All right. What if I told you that what happened to Pops is tied up with the folks who stole your legs? But before I could answer, the band began to play, which meant I'd have to ask him about the case later. Heaven had strict rules prohibiting all electronic transmissions once the performance started. The world outside might be chaos, but here, jazz ruled. You still play? I asked. Train nodded, as much to the music as to my question. Once a jazz boy, always a jazz boy, he said. The jazz boys were Train, or as his birth certificate says, John Coltrane Smith, his father, Thelonious Monk Smith, and me, Joe Jones Smith. Monk wanted to go with Philly Joe Jones, but thought better of it. Monk's father had loved jazz and named his only son after his favorite artist. Not to be outdone, Monk then named his two boys after his two favorite musicians. It didn't matter that Monk had adopted me. If he knew then what I was, he never mentioned it. He treated me just like Train. He even had me pick up an instrument, the drums. The waitress brought over some buffalo wings and more booze. At this point, the liquor was really starting to kick in, and I was starting to drift. But Train looked none worse for the wear. He held up his glass for a toast. To life and family, he said. He actually smiled at me when he said that. I damn near dropped my drink because Train never smiles. Once we downed our drinks, he leaned back in his chair and turned his attention to the crowd. Several women seemed eager to get his attention, but he blew them off. Searching for what? Are there any vampires in here? I asked. Plenty, but you're safe. The clubs are neutral territory, he said, just as he made eye contact with a very pale Billie Holiday wannabe walking to the stage. In here, they can't hurt you, and I can't hurt them. It's the law. But don't let me catch her outside. Anyone else would have just run, get as far away from New York, from Harlem as they possibly can. But you don't have a city as media-friendly as New York get overrun by vampires without someone noticing it. After an isolated vampire sighting as far south as Princeton, the feds dropped a laser net that went from Westchester down to Trenton. Whether you were human or vampire, the result was the same. One touch, you were ashes. The only thing separating us from death were the Rangers. The Rangers were the bloodshot eye in the center of the storm, forgotten soldiers who worked the darkest streets and lived to talk about it. Whenever I sat down with Train and Monk, my status as a reporter meant that I was sure to get an earful. Folks need to know what we're up against, Train would say. What's happening up here ain't no different than Vietnam, Kuwait, or South Mars. Harlem got mamas crying and babies dying, just like all them other places. Why aren't we on the evening news every night? What? Since it's only Harlem, you can't spend the Army, the Marines, the Green Berets, all those folks that get paid good money to kill and put an end to this nonsense? The rest of Manhattan, nah, skip that. The rest of the world needs to learn what the vampires already know. Black folk bleed too. Of course, smack dab in the middle of all that righteous indignation, Monk would pop another garlic-coated bullet into his clip and spit the truth. Son, I hear you, but it all comes down to this. Somebody's got to die. You know it won't be the rich folks, so guess who's left? Of course, one of the questions I asked was, where'd the vampires come from in the first place? An FBI buddy of Monk's, a brother who still had a grandmother living up on Strivers Row, had emailed Monk some documents that said an expiration date to find a cure for AIDS ended up spreading something far worse. Hold up. I don't know why I said expiration date. Some documents that said an experiment to find a cure for AIDS ended up spreading something far worse. The study tested the vaccine among both adults and teenagers. All the adults died and stayed dead. It was the teenagers that became the problem. They weren't like those creatures you see in the old movie tapes. They couldn't turn into bats. And once they bit you, you didn't return from the grave, but they did have fangs, unnatural strength, and speed. And they also had something that Hollywood hadn't thought of, the ability to breed. The drug seemed to supercharge their metabolisms. Overnight, boys grew into men and girls grew into women, and vampire sex produced baby vampires. Reports claimed that the baby vamps reached adulthood in about a year's time. Pretty soon, vampires were as common in New York as roaches. They were everywhere and hungry. Always hungry. Monk said, the laser net was what changed the game. Whether you was human or a vamp, you could see the writing on the wall. Nobody was getting out, and no help was coming in. Them was some dark days. Rumor has it that the mayor knew he had until sundown to come up with a plan. Over the next 3 hours, police rounded up every psychic, witch, and any other practitioner of anything even remotely supernatural. And when darkness came, he succeeded in working out favorable terms for Manhattan. Everybody else, Brooklyn, the Bronx, Harlem, Washington Heights, Queens, Long Island, and Westchester, and northern New Jersey, was on their own. Only one survived, Harlem. You see, Harlem had something the other neighborhoods didn't. A talisman developed especially to kill vampires. Many people have heard of it, but only one person knows where it is. Monk. He called it Soulfire. Train nodded over toward the bar. You know that guy? He asked. At first, I didn't know who he was talking about. Then I noticed that one of the patrons was looking at us a little too hard. He whispered to a friend. Both looked like some guys I had seen at a Giants game, playing linebacker. I clicked my recording equipment back on. To hell with the rules. I wanted to be a Ranger from day one, Train said. He had seen me click on the equipment and probably thought I wanted to continue the interview. But that wasn't it. I wanted to catch a killer. My own. Some things are just in the blood, you know what I'm saying? Yo, I was so hyped when I killed my first vamp before I even got my first injection. Injection? What injection? I don't remember reading about, I said, and you never will. He said, I'm telling you stuff that's pure Tuskegee 626. Magic came up with the problem, and science came up with an answer. Straight up. They called it molecular enhancement therapy, but we used to just call it bounce, because that's what it would do to you. Have you bouncing off the walls. So it was just you, I asked. No partner? Just me, dog. I guess the other rangers wanted to see if Monk's kid was coasting on his daddy's rep or if I was the real deal. But I was holding my own. Then I found a little present stashed behind the dumpster. A hottie. Even in our high-tech age, the rules for killing vampires were the same. Sunlight, wooden stake, decapitation, or fire. The hottie was a flamethrower someone had developed that was the size of a .22. Whoever thought it up probably made a fortune. They weren't legal, but plenty of folks had one. I could have used one this afternoon. Then it hit me, where I had seen those two thugs who were staring at me. Yo, Earth to Joe, Train said. This is some deep shit I'm getting ready to share up in here. I need you to focus. Some part of me must have heard him, but I could still feel myself gripping the edge of the table extra hard. They just took my legs. Could they really be back for more already? You remember how the mayor used to come over the house when me and you was little? Train asked. Yeah. Seemed like he and Monk would spend all day and all night arguing, I said. To this day, I don't know why Monk adopted me, but he always made time for us, even on nights when he played the dozens. His term for days when he pulled back. His days for when he pulled 12-hour shifts back to back. He always put family first, no matter what the consequences. Then there was the mayor, who was just the opposite. Even back when he was just an assistant DA, there were two things he always had plenty of: cheap suits and big dreams. The mayor was easily the most hated man in Harlem, especially after word hit the street that he had struck a deal with the vampires to protect Manhattan, but only Manhattan below 96th Street. That meant you were fair game if you lived in Harlem, or Washington Heights, or even Morningside Heights, home of Columbia University and so many rich white folk they didn't even call that part of the city Harlem anymore. It was he who installed the 24-hour-a-day border patrols, armed every guard to the teeth. But it wasn't the vampires they were trying to keep out. Once word of the mayor's arrangement hit the streets, everybody suddenly had a cousin downtown that they had to go visit. And just as quickly, if you couldn't produce proof of residence, you were shot on sight. It got real ugly real fast. The mayor's been asking about you, Train said. What does he want? But I knew. Probably knew the first time I met him. The mayor and Monk would argue late into the night. I never knew what they said, but I always knew who they were talking about. I could tell by the way the mayor kept looking at me. Like he owned me. He's got your legs, Train said. What? Who told you that? You work the streets, you hear things, he said. Question is, what are we going to do about it? Perhaps I was too stunned by his words to hear the hiss of the jets as the room filled with gas. It was the panic that ensued that caught my eye, the log jam at the door, tables and chairs being kicked over. I remember hearing several shots being fired. That would be Train. And feeling water hit my arm. Bye-bye, fish tank. Then the quick pinch of a needle. The rest was darkness. I woke up in a bedroom full of uncomfortable furniture and no mirrors. It had that old man smell. That's how I knew where I was before anyone even entered the room. But I was still surprised that the white man facing me was wearing my watch. And my arms. My black arms. Do you want the watch back? The mayor said. You know what I want back, I said. He made a point of crossing his legs as he sat. His pants legs rose up above the nylon socks, just enough to reveal what used to be my black legs. Sorry, son. I rather like these legs. In fact, I liked them so much I had my friends bring you back so I could get the arms as well. But boss, one of his vampire thugs asked, what's with the back and forth? You got him right here. Why not just take it all? I was wondering the same thing myself. That would be out of the question, the mayor said. Both the donor and the recipient need at least 2 hours to heal per attachment, even though he is my property. I wouldn't want to damage the merchandise, the mayor said. How about his face? The thug asked. You need that? Oh, I'd never use that, the mayor said. As if on cue, the thug smacked me so hard I thought it was the 4th of July. I woke up to the smell of marijuana and coconut incense. I was back in my own apartment, back in my own bed. I must have spent a good 5 minutes staring at my new synthetic arms before it clicked that I wasn't alone. Yo, Joe, you okay? Train asked. He was smoking a blunt, a cigar-sized marijuana joint. You can still get good drugs uptown, just not at night. You want some of this? He asked. Before I could answer, I felt another pair of hands helping me up. The same hands that held me as a child. Monk. Give the boy a minute, he said. As my eyes adjusted to the light, a soft glow like the first rays of sunrise, I finally noticed the body of the vampire thug that had hit me earlier. At least, that's who I thought it was. It was a little hard to tell since the body had no head. We'll clean that up later, Train said, again holding out the blunt for me to take a hit. But I didn't need it. I can't believe this, I said. T, I knew that you were still out there, but I just felt it. But Monk, Pop, I said, reaching out to give both a hug. 1,000 pinpricks ran up my new arms, but I didn't care one bit. I thought you was dead, Monk smiled. Well, yeah, I am, he said. This time when Train offered me the blunt, I took it. Welcome home, Monk said. We were standing outside what looked like a record store on Malcolm X Boulevard. Once upon a time, this street was home to the jazz-kissed nightlife that gave Harlem its luster. The gravity-defying swing and sway of dancers at the Savoy Ballroom, the clink-clink of champagne glasses in the Cotton Club, home to both the mob and high society. Now it was home to black market trade in black body parts. The record store was only one of many body shops lining the street. I was tracking 2 vampires when I first stumbled across my first body shop. And you, Monk said. I found out later that it was run by 2 well-known geneticists who got trapped in Manhattan when the feds dropped the net. What's that got to do with the mayor? I asked. Give me a minute and I'll tell you, Monk said. He motioned for Train to set the timing device on a bomb attached to the door of the record store. Train made sure to grab a few jazz CDs first. Everybody knew that once the net was in place, there was no place to run, and it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that it wasn't long for the vamps would run out of food. The scientist saw a business opportunity, Monk said, as we stepped across the street and crouched behind what was left of a Harlem hospital ambulance. They saw human cloning as a way to serve 2 markets, rich folk who wanted to live forever, and the vampires who could never get enough to eat. Only problem was, most of the rich clients had too much ego to stand seeing someone who looked exactly like them get cut up for spare parts. Struck too close to home. So they asked the doctors to toss some black pepper into their genetic stew. Catch my drift? Which explained why I had the mayor's eyes and some unknown sister's nose and lips. The resulting package was genetically similar enough to allow for harvesting, the replacement of failing original equipment with younger and darker spares. Throw in a little, what do they call it now? Pigmentation engineering, which ain't nothing but high-tech makeup and skin bleaching. And the white original could live out his days with significantly younger body parts. They'd let the poor black clone keep just enough of his human body parts to be sold as food for the vamps. And the mayor knew all about it? I said. Yeah, Monk said. That was part of the deal he cut with the vampires. He offered to set them up with a steady source of grub. I'm not ready to be somebody's chicken nugget, I said. No, son, Monk said. The mayor and I had a deal too. He'd leave you alone, and I'd leave him alone. But that was then. This is now. As if to dramatize Monk's point, the bomb exploded, sending glass and brick in every direction. The alarm system on the ambulance honked in response until Train blew that up too. Who else knew? I asked. Your brother, Monk said as Train helped me to my feet. I figured the mayor would come for all of us one day, Monk said. One thing about politicians, they never keep a promise. So what happens now? I asked. You got a choice to make, son, he said as he inspected the damage. This ain't the only lab out here. Yeah, I figured that, I said. Then you know we can't be spending all day watching your back, Train said. You know we love you. Far as I'm concerned, your blood, but Harlem needs us too. So while you're off playing superhero, I'm left here to die? I said. That's not what I'm saying, Train said. I'm saying if you want to live, you got to be ready to die. You can't just walk into the light, kid. You got to be the light. You lost me. What do you mean? Monk broke it down. When they started the Rangers, the idea was to go to the vampires one better, Monk said. So we all went through molecular enhancement therapy, thinking the drugs would make us faster, stronger, harder to kill. The bounce, I said. That's right. But what we didn't know was that by accelerating everything, your body breaks down faster. That's right. But what we didn't know was that by accelerating everything, your body breaks down faster, Train said. So where we started off was science fighting magic. Eventually we realized we had to fight fire with fire, Monk said. Soul fire? Right. Ever since the vamps first hit, I've been reading everything I could get my hands on about them, Monk said. Not just the Eastern European stuff, but the vampire legends out of India, Malaysia, even Africa. They have vampires in Africa? I asked. The Ashanti spoke about witches called the Obayafo that drink the blood of children. Not only would they kill your kids, they'd also kill your crops, Monk said. There was only one way to stop them. A dying warrior must have his blood shed at sunrise. His soul would then capture the first rays of the sun and keep them as his own. That explains why Train's shirt had Monk's blood on it. Now Pops is like a living hottie, Train said. He can fire both heat and light. The Ashanti called us children of the sun. I kind of like that, Monk said. And the magic object you're supposed to have that kills the vampires? I asked. The soul fire? A bluff, Monk said. Something to give the vamps and the mayor something to think about until we could come up with the real thing. How would the bounce work on me? I said. As if on cue, both my arms and legs began to twitch. My guess is you'd have to detach the ones you got since the bounce will cause you to grow back real ones, Monk said. But I'd be able to defend myself, right? I asked. You won't be playing defense, Train said. But after we show you everything we know, no one will mess with you. Believe that. Maybe, Monk said. Problem is, to my knowledge, they've never tested the bounce on a clone. This might sound harsh, but since you're a copy and not the original, I could break down even faster. Afraid so, Monk said. Damn, why can't anything in this life ever be easy? Yeah, but the way I see it, this move still beats the alternative, Train said. It's your choice, but I know what I'd do. Sunrise on 125th Street. It took several very stiff drinks for me to get up the nerve to take Train's life. He was, and still is, my best friend. But as the blood poured out of him, golden beams of morning sun flowed into him. Seeing Train rise up and stand before me, smiling, was both unsettling and uplifting. Steadying me was Monk's hand upon my shoulder. "Thanks, D," Train said, grinning. "What's it like?" "I can't tell you, but I can show you." Train had talked a few rangers into helping him set up our instruments on the street in front of the Apollo Theater. As I sat down in my drum set, one of the rangers injected me with the bounce. I felt an immediate rush, but I'll never know how much of it was from the drug and how much of it was from hearing Train and Monk hit their first few notes. That afternoon, I would begin battle training with the Rangers. I had decided to pay the mayor a visit on Father's Day, which was next week. I had even picked out his gift, a trip to Manhattan, above 96th Street, after dark. Soon. Not now, but soon. I had time. Tomorrow belonged to Harlem, but this morning was all about the music, all about the Jazz Boys. As if they had read my mind, the music hit the break where I was given the chance to solo. I tore it up, but my real moment was still to come. And thus endeth the story. Yo, I like that, and I'm furious. I'm not even gonna front. I want to watch the movie. I want to read the next chapter. I want to read the sequel. I want a whole book of that. Parts of this put me in the mind of who here is familiar with Kindred. Who here's not Kindred, not Kindred. Oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? Y'all know who I'm talking about. They were a traveling band of vampire hunters led by the sister. Oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? Who knows it? Who knows it? I'm finna look it up because it's driving me crazy. Why am I drawing a blank? Because I have an autographed copy of for LA Banks. LA Banks had Minion, not Kindred, Minion. It kind of puts me in the mind of Minion. Yeah, LA Banks autographed a copy of that for me. Met her at the signing, told her about a dream that I had had that came in 7 segments, 7 nights in a row. And she literally almost slapped me upside my head and said, "You better write that book. Anything that comes to you that way, you better write it." I probably should write it. Let's see what some of y'all said in the comments. It looks like there was quite a bit of chat. Let me know how y'all felt about it. Me personally, I loved this story. Really, really did. Oh, y'all had a lot of chatty. Benny B was in the house. We saw that. Also, if you didn't know, this is called The Show. That's right. You got it. You got it. I see K&M is here watching on YouTube. That's what's up. I saw out of the corner of my eyes, "Woo Vampires, I like this story." And I knew it was Kitty Foxy because Kitty Foxy gets in on all the horror related stuff. So tell me specifically what you thought of this story, because I really want to know your feelings on it. That sound that y'all heard, what was that? Was that Don Cheadle? No, that was not Donnie. Donnie made the same face that I did. He was like, "What the hell was that?" I don't know what that was. Somebody set off some sort of car alarm, and who knows? That might have been the vampires. Who really knows? Uh, it's good to see my friend Alicia Z, Salt and Honey in the place. Good to see you. And Nikki, good to see you too. Let's see. I want to get past the bloodshot eye in the center of the storm. That was a nice line. I caught that one too. I like that one a lot. Baby vampires had me messed up because this question, yes, I was like, wait a minute, like now in one of the Blade movies, didn't somebody give birth to a baby vampire? Like that was kind of the thing, right? Um, this is really what started to hit me when it kind of took on that Get Out vibe, and we realized that they were explicitly, specifically harvesting black bodies, and that it was white people doing it. And I kept wondering where that was going when it was like the owner and the clone. And I was like, okay, so if he's a clone, that means a black person, right? It did not dawn on me that they were cloning their white selves and adding blackness to it. Golly day damn it. Whew. I mean, I know this is a work of fiction, but it fucks me up because legit white supremacy knows no bounds. I mean, the author fictionalized this, but did that not occur for you as, of course, that's what they do, right? Or is that just me? Is that just me? Can't be. Okay, so y'all feel like I should write the damn story. Got it. Anyhow, y'all know where y'all can go to pick up a copy of Dark Matter Reading the Bones. If you like it, if you love it, if you want some more of it, you can find a copy at Harriet's Bookshop. For those of you who are on Facebook, you can follow this link. But listen, support any black bookstore that you like, all right? And bonus points if you can support one at home. If there is one in your neighborhood, listen, our small bookstores need our help. Our black small bookstores absolutely need and deserve our help. We got to support. This show is about celebrating and elevating black literature and making sure that everybody gets a chance to hear it, as many people as I can reach, as many people as I can touch. And when you hear it, I don't want you to just stop there. I want you to go out and buy these books, support these writers, support these authors, support these black bookstores. Keep our stories going. All right. So yeah, that was the first story, because Harlem Needs Heroes. I loved that joint. That was a really good feeling story. I don't see any other comments coming from y'all. So I feel like I froze. I froze. I know I froze. Hold up. Here we go. And we're back. All right. So I feel like this is a good time to move into our second and final story of the night. We're going to move a little bit expeditiously, as T.I. would say, so that we try and have a little bit of room for comments. But this story, by wonderful, wonderful friend of the program, Crystal Wilkinson. This story is from Water Street, and it's called An Ordinary Man. So we just read about some decidedly not ordinary men. I felt like this would be a good balance for it. Yeah? Oh, maybe. Let's find out. Let's find out together, shall we? And in case you didn't know, this is called the show. All right. Oh, and by the way, yeah, hold up. I've shown you all a few times what Dark Matter Reading the Bones looks like. This is it. This is what the book looks. Hold up. Oh no, that'll never do. Let's fix that right quick. Let's fix that. I didn't know that was going on. Yeah, boom. This is what Dark Matter Reading the Bones looks like. There you go. So that you can know what you're looking for when you go to the bookstore. And the book that we're about to read from Crystal E. Wilkinson, this is what Water Street looks like. Now, there are a few different covers. This is the one that I have, but you all might find something different. Either way, that being said, let's get into it, all right? Before becoming a preacher, Reverend Townsend had been a deacon, and before becoming a deacon, he had simply been Eli Henry Townsend, an ordinary man. Eli, the boy, overgrown and clumsy for his age, with splotchy skin and raggedy clothes, still lives inside of Reverend Townsend, who is now over 6 feet tall and has broad shoulders, a belly that rises out in front of him under perfectly tailored suits. He doesn't look fat at all. He carries his weight well, possesses a dignified strut. The women in the church consider him good-looking when he peers at them from over his wide-rimmed glasses and smiles at them above a well-groomed salt and pepper beard and says, "Yes, sister. How may I help you today?" His hellos sound like sermons. The entire community comes to him, the women mostly, to vent their problems, and they do dress to the nines. Reverend Townsend likes to set them in their suits and their colorful dresses, crisp and pleated straight from the cleaners. Even when he tries not to, he takes great pleasure in a bit of cleavage or the fine rivage, one more time, or the fine ridges of a perfect neck bone that rises up daintily from a scooped collar or protrudes in a perfect angle from beneath an unbuttoned blouse. Women are a mystery to him, fascinating. He is mostly available on Sundays after church, but he also schedules Thursday counseling sessions if they need him. He is precious to this cluster of women who dote on him and bring him sweet potato pies and lemon cakes, fried chicken and green beans, homemade rolls and cornbread. And it isn't always one-sided. Reverend Townsend gives back in the community. He gives food to the sick, elderly, and shut-ins. He cuts the yards of the widowers, drives folks to the doctor. He visits the nursing homes, conducts house visits, and gives prayer. This is his life now. Eli, the boy, remembers growing up in Hudsonville, the death of his mother, he and his brother peering into the back room while she was on her deathbed. He was scared of her, afraid of the rattle that whistled in her throat. He strains his memory to see his mother smiling and happy like the mothers in his church, but all he can glimpse is a woman rotting away in the bed as he watched from the doorway, her black hair splayed out on the pillow, her form hollow beneath the sheet. He sees his father, sitting at the kitchen table, silent and angry, staring off into the dark, barking out orders to do chores when he opened his mouth. Eli quit school in 4th grade to help his father on the farm. He remembers eating only fried potatoes and cornbread for supper. When he thinks of those days, he goes to his refrigerator and checks to see that he still has a carton of eggs, a gallon of milk, meat, and he runs his fingertips over the canned vegetables and stews and soups in the cupboard, taps the boxes of crackers and snacks. Eli, the boy, recalls some glimmer of play. He and his brother Edward playing basketball with rotten crab apples or pawpaws. After the death of their mother, Eli and Edward should have grown closer and became each other's lean-to, but it never happened like that. Whether it was a fight over a baseball game or a tug of war over who was to get the last piece of cornbread, there was always a wedge between them, a clear line drawn that neither of them crossed. Their father saw it plain as the sun setting over the hills, but he never let on, never stopped the fight, never took sides. His grieving well was dug too deep. If there was anything that Eli and Edward agreed on, it was that grief murdered their father 5 years to the day after their mother had died. The doctors had said it was lung cancer from the cigars he smoked, but anyone who knew him knew it was from grief. After their father died, Edward, who was 19, took on his 15-year-old brother to raise. They kept up the farm as best they could, planted a garden, and kept the chickens fed. They sold them in town on the weekends. Even then, in their orphan state, Eli and Edward were opposites. Eli, even with all his hard work, cooked, cleaned, and studied his mother's Bible and carried it with him from place to place. He was still clumsy and unsure then, a heavy boy who was considered the nice one, but not the handsome one. Edward worked odd jobs to make ends meet. Sometimes he worked over in Liberty at the sawmill. At others, he traveled to Danville and Stanford for construction work, housing tobacco, cutting hay, just whatever he could get. He was a drinker and cursed to the high heavens, but was the looker. A rugged, muscled torso and arm muscles that made girls speechless and flirty. Reverend Townsend is 56 and single, but has a girlfriend, Ariel. Ariel is one of the church's finest. They do not make public appearances together because Reverend Townsend does not think it proper. She has gone to him every Wednesday evening after prayer meetings for 6 months. Some Wednesdays, Reverend Townsend gets so beyond himself, knowing what will come later with Ariel, that he stutters in the prayer room when he notices her glancing in his direction. Ariel is a secretary at the elementary school. She is quiet and bookish, not a drop of makeup. A member of the choir, she is 49 and never married, and still lives with her parents. She arrives at 6 p.m., carrying her church bookkeeping notebook. She enters the side door of Reverend Townsend's small 2-bedroom parsonage. "Good evening, Reverend," she says. "Sister Ariel, please come in." A greeting fit for public. Once inside, Reverend Townsend removes the notebook from Ariel's hands, places it on the kitchen table. He kisses not just the center of the back of her hand like the gentlemen do in the movies, but the palms and each of her fingers, and up and down her arms to the elbows. He cradles her face in his hands and presses his lips to her eyelids, her cheeks, and her nose. He places several closed-mouth kisses on the lips, and lastly he moves to her neck. She has perfect neck bones, tiny, delicate ridges rising up below her sleek, smooth skin. He unlooses the chignon neatly pinned to the back of her head and lets her hair fall to her shoulders. He strokes the nape of her neck and lets loose curls caress his and lets her loose curls caress his hands, but goes no further. He loves Ariel. She is cherished. Ariel receives this attention with a whispered, "Oh, Reverend," but not much more. Ariel is a quiet lover. In fact, they are not lovers at all. Even though he is a perfectly fine cook, Ariel cooks dinner for Reverend Townsend. Spaghetti with fresh tomatoes and meat sauce with garlic biscuits once a week. Baked chicken and her special cheddar cheese potato casserole the next. It is a post she wishes to have permanently, not just on Wednesdays. But Reverend Townsend has not proposed. Over dinner, Ariel tells Reverend Townsend of her day. She tries to think of things to sound exciting, but it always comes out the same. "How was your day, Ariel, dear?" "The children at the school need the Lord." "Well, you should invite them to the Lord, Sister Ariel." "Where there is a will, there's a way. With God, all is possible." "Amen." Reverend Townsend nods his head because he is proud that Ariel is doing God's work. After dinner has been served and eaten, the dishes washed and placed neatly away back underneath the pine cabinets, they settle on the couch with a good amount of respectable space between them. Reverend Townsend tells Ariel about his dreams of a church with a large congregation and a choir that travels all over the state, and a separate young people service with more music and basketball tournaments and respectable dances and socials for the children. She listens and can imagine her position beside him as the preacher's wife. She tells him of her ambition to work with youth, her ideas about Sunday school, and sometimes she helps him find a way through the rough spot in his sermons. And so it goes. They are boring and formal in their love. Bland conversation laced with scripture. There is not one word about the personal that seeps into their exchanges, though they both want more. Ariel wants to tell Reverend Townsend that he has the most kissable lips she has ever seen. She wants him to just tell her that he cares for her, that he loves her. She dreams of him on bended knee with a ring and the whole bit. Ariel seems content with their distant physical relationship, but it is Reverend Townsend who desires to undo the buttons of her blouse and take her rosebud nipples into his mouth. He knows they are there. Sometimes he can see them there, through her white blouse, waiting. When she is bent over the sink and he is in the den reading scriptures out to her, he watches her thin hips straining the material of the long skirts that she wears, and he wants nothing more than to see and touch what's underneath. The rest is there. He loves her. He has tasted her cooking. He wishes she would tell him all her hopes and dreams. He wants to hear every word. He wants to have her in his arms. Much of the evening is a blur because Reverend Townsend is waiting for the night to end. He will miss Ariel when she leaves, but he is anxious for the end when he will feel permission to touch Ariel goodbye. Some nights, when Ariel is wishing so much to be proposed to, she looks Reverend Townsend in the eye and leans her head into the back of the couch and tries to look alluring. "I enjoy you," she says. A brave move for such a pious woman. It's "I love you" that she wants to say, but she doesn't dare. "You are a fine woman, Sister Ariel. A good, good woman." And Reverend Townsend takes both of Ariel's hands into his and holds them firmly and kisses them again. When she leaves at 9 o'clock, Reverend Townsend helps her into her jacket and puts his arms around her waist. He is guilty of bringing his hands as close to her breasts as possible without actually touching them when he releases the hug. He will pray on that later. He kisses her again and wills himself not to act out of passion. Once he hears her car start and move down the street, Reverend Townsend presses himself against his couch where the warmth of her body still lingers. He can smell the freshly showered cleanness of her skin. One night, Ariel leaves her sweater draped over the sofa chair, and Reverend Townsend brings it into his bed and spreads it out near the pillow where Ariel should be. He tucks the covers up around where Ariel's neck would lie on the pillow and falls asleep with his hand cradling his head, staring at the empty sweater woman he has made. He tries his best not to become desperate or vulgar, but he really can't help it. He grasps for what he can't have. When Ariel leaves an open soda on his coffee table, he drinks the warm liquid, imagining he is taking in some of her essence. He allows his tongue to touch the opening of the can. He knows no one is in the room, yet he looks around to make sure. On the rare occasions when Ariel's blouse is extremely sheer, or her skirt is tighter than he can stand, or when he is lucky enough to accidentally touch her breasts, Reverend Townsend retreats to the bathroom to relieve himself by bringing his lust to completion. Afterward, the guilt rises up in him and he takes a shower, hoping to wash away his indiscretions down the drain. He gets on his knees and prays before he climbs into his bed alone. A teenaged Eli remembers Trina Mullins, his first girlfriend. There have not been many. Trina lived a few houses away on the quiet, winding street. Almost all the houses in Hudsonville were spread out evenly along the streets. There were no subdivisions, no bland, identical rows of houses. Across the street from the homes and rising up behind them in the back was farm property. Each family owned their own little front piece and a back piece of land. Trina wasn't the prettiest girl. She had buck teeth with short, uneven hair. A girl who was Eli's full twin in clumsiness and opposite in girth, a tiny wasted thing. He remembers their walk up through the woods behind his house, the smell of honeysuckle and wet grass, the sky bright blue as a robin's egg, the memory of warmth of sun on his face, and the splash of the branch that trickled along the ground. The splash of the branch that trickled along the ground, and the sweetness of the blackberries they ate straight from the vine. He had shared his first kiss with Trina. Her lips had been like cotton. Eli, the teenager, remembers his brother having girlfriends in the house all the time. Women, according to Edward, were there to cook and clean and have sex with because that's what they were good for. Occasionally, a girlfriend would knock on the door when Eli was home alone. He would invite her in to watch the tiny black and white TV, offer her a bite to eat, something to drink, until Edward arrived home from the job. When Edward was around, the girl would somehow transform, smoothing her hair over her ears, pressing her lips together to refresh her lipstick, giggling a new laugh. When she was alone with Eli, she was sweet and normal and prodded him for information about Edward. "Come on, Eli. You can tell me," she would say and grab his arm playfully at the bicep. Eli hadn't learned much about being a man from his father or from Edward. He hadn't learned much about women from them either. From his father, he learned that women are fragile things that die like berries on the vine when you love them the most. From Edward, he learned that women had a place in the world, a tiny place, like a pocket where you should keep them held hostage until you needed them for something useful. He knew he wanted more than that from Ariel, but he didn't know how to go about getting it. He wanted and needed so much from her that it filled up his whole parsonage. It was more than the cooking or the cleaning, more than the sex too, and he wanted it all. For Eli's 18th birthday, Edward brought home a loud-talking woman with wide hips. It was the first time Eli had ever seen a black woman with blonde hair. "Happy birthday, little brother. This here is Candy Bridgewater. She's your present." Eli, at first, was unsure exactly what Edward meant, and when he realized, he couldn't do anything but look to the floor, embarrassed and even a bit frightened. "Candy's gonna give you your first piece of pie. You ready for some birthday pie, boy?" Candy Bridgewater's voice boomed like thunder through the house. Oh, wow, that was her line. Okay, hold up. Let's redo that one. "Candy's gonna give you your first piece of pie. You ready for some birthday pie, boy?" Candy Bridgewater's voice boomed like thunder through the house. She kissed Eli long and hard and thrust her tongue in and out of his mouth. Eli tried to will himself to stop feeling what he was feeling, but it was a lost cause. His embarrassment was growing and becoming too obvious. I think he's ready to go have at it. Edward grinned and pointed down the short hallway to Eli's room and laughed. In his room, Eli watched his Candy stripped off naked. He had never seen a woman's naked body before. Although Candy was 25, a mother, and slightly out of shape, Eli took in her body like rain. "Touch me," she said when she got closer to the bed. She smelled like vanilla. He obeyed and touched her, but when she tried to climb on top of him, he stopped her, even though he didn't know why, but he felt so wicked. A few minutes later, he heard his brother forcing Candy up against the wall to finish the job she was paid to do. While he listened to the thump, thump, thump of Candy and Edward, Eli put his hand into his jeans and finished himself. That had been nearly 40 years ago, and Reverend Townsend is still a virgin and thankful to God for the will and the power to abstain. If he had been Catholic, he would have been primed for the priesthood, but as a Baptist, he considered himself a rare specimen, a man worthy of God. On the eve of their 6-month anniversary, Ariel comes to Reverend Townsend like every other Wednesday, but when she enters the parsonage, she whisks past him, throws the notebook onto the counter, and begins dinner. She does not wait for the kissing ritual. She knows she will make him a perfect wife, but he resists. She is tired of keeping her distance in church while the other women in the congregation fawn all over him. She's tired of the charade. "Good evening, Sister Ariel. We missed you at prayer meeting," the Reverend manages, but he is startled and taken aback. "Reverend," she nods from across the room. Reverend Townsend holds out his arms and walks toward her as if to try and reclaim his weekly hug, but Ariel flits out of his grasp and begins preparing dinner. She takes out the cutting board and a large knife and pulls the head of lettuce from the refrigerator. The force she uses to prepare the greens causes the Reverend to take a few steps backward. His heart is beating miles and miles a minute. Something has come over Ariel. "And how was your week?" Reverend Townsend stutters through the question, his voice quivering like Eli the boy. He quickly clears his throat and tries to regain his self-respect. "Fine." And Ariel brings the knife down so hard into the cucumbers that it makes a clunking sound. She pulls the chicken from the refrigerator, rinses it, adds garlic, salt, and pepper with the same rigid force, like a woman gone mad. Ariel is hoping that Reverend Townsend will come over to her and take her into his arms, but he doesn't. He retreats to the couch, where he pulls up his reading glasses and begins his sermon silently. Ariel and Reverend Townsend exchange glances a few minutes apart. All the while, Ariel is preparing the food and making huffing and hissing sounds through her teeth. Reverend Townsend is trying to remain calm, but the thought of losing Ariel sends his head into a spin. At the dinner table, Ariel and Reverend Townsend eat in silence. He wants to ask her what's wrong, but doesn't quite know how to on any personal level. So he begins the way that he would begin a counseling session with one of his church members. "What burdens your heart, Sister Ariel?" "With God's help, Reverend Townsend, I need to get going along." Before the dishes are washed and put away, before dinner is over, Ariel begins to leave. When Ariel reaches the door, her hand on the knob, Reverend Townsend grabs her from behind at the shoulders. He still hasn't found the words yet. A man who depends on words for his salvation, and he can't form a single word in his mouth. He pulls Ariel into him and holds her tightly around the waist. He is breathing heavy, as though he is fighting for his life. Ariel leans back into him and gasps, "Eli," with surprise. He presses his mouth eagerly into her neck. He is sobbing and desperate, both decadent and pure. He allows his hands to move into her blouse, and he carefully cups one of her breasts. He lets the weight of it rest in his hand, like an egg. And thus endeth the story. An ordinary man, Eli Townsend, Reverend Eli Townsend. That was I know I lost some of y'all, and that's all right. Y'all missed out. This is a great, great story, I think. What's the comment that I saw? Melanin Monroe says that Crystal Wilkinson is such a weaver of words. I love the way she not only paints pictures, but always leaves you with your own I remember when moments. Let's see what else we got here. Well, thank you, Pat. That's awfully sweet of you. I appreciate that. This line was fantastic. His grieving well was dug too deep. I love that. I love that. The Rev knows how to show Ariel he cherishes her. He does, but it just like Luther's curl, it just didn't quite. Mm. Um, yeah, the tension of all of this. I can see that some of y'all have experienced similar relationships and and the frustration of it. Olive and Boo says a closed mouth don't get fed. That's word life. That's true. Judy has experienced this relationship before, as has Melanin. Um, it was an interesting line, both decadent and pure. There is something really special about that desire. It comes from a very, very pure place. Um, it was interesting to read, frustrating to a certain extent. Agreed. There was absolutely good reason to be frustrated, but it was overall a really powerful and interesting read. A wonderfully woven character study and a portrait of a relationship. And now I really want some spaghetti. And I've never had garlic biscuits, and I don't know why. Why have I never had garlic biscuits? I wasn't raised right. Something ain't right. Listen, y'all, this has been exactly what I needed tonight, and I hope that it was satisfactory to you too. I am always thrilled to share these evenings with you. I love when you come on. I love when you stick it out with me for the whole read. So for those of you all who championed your way through, I sure enough appreciate you. If you've got thoughts or comments on the story, go ahead and drop those in. I may not respond to them while we're still live, but I'll try and come in and respond. And again, if you want an opportunity to win the lit bag when we finally, word life, get to 1,000 subscribers, all you got to do is make sure that when this airs on YouTube, first, that you're subscribed to the channel. Second, that you've liked that episode, and make sure that you make a comment. Do that, and your name is entered. Bing, bang, boom. We're gonna pull a random name out once we hit 1,000 subscribers, and that one lucky person is going to get several wonderful, wonderful books from some STWJ faves on. And again, please follow and share our pages. Let your friends know that this thing is happening. Share it. If you like the stories and you enjoy what's going on here, why tell them about this human nature? Would you keep this to yourself? Why would you do that? No, spread the word, post the links, help us to bring more people here to hear more of this wonderful, wonderful Black literature. Follow and share our pages. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. The Twitter is Storytime Julian. The Instagram is Storytime Julian. The Cash App is $Storytime Julian. And my Twitter, should you decide you want to hear some of my random ramblings, is Magnet for Awesome. All right. You can find us on Facebook. The name of the page is just Storytime with Julian. And that's the same on YouTube, just youtube.com/Storytime with Julian. Had a wonderful time with you all tonight. If you are so inclined, please feel free to tip your griot, because every dollar that you give, even if it's just $1, I promise you, every dollar that you give goes directly back into this show to keep it going and to make it the best show that it can be. This is it for us this week. Our next episode will be on Tuesday. We will be at episode 97, counting it down, getting our way to 100. It has been a real pleasure seeing you all. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you, Steve, and I see that you said it was a good show. I appreciate that. And let's see. It's the human nature whisper for me. You know what? I didn't know nobody heard it, but yeah. All right. Listen, y'all, this has been Storytime with Julian. It has been a real pleasure sharing this time with you. I'm going to go ahead and kick that outro music, and we'll see you next week. Peace.